Hi, my friends. This is Lada from astrolada.com, and today we're diving into the eclipse, the lunar eclipse on July 27th, which will be the biggest eclipse since 120 years. The biggest lunar eclipse, the most potent, the closest, the most fullest, the longest in duration. So, and as you know, eclipses are karmic events, they foreshadow fated and karmic events in life. And we're going to talk about what we can expect in the world and what you can expect personally for you. And first, I will describe the energies of the eclipse. Please stay with me, it's so important so you can understand it deeply, you can understand the process. And then I'm going to go to predictions for the 12 signs. And I want you to check from your ascendant. It's very important to check the eclipse where it's happening from your rising sign if you know it, if you know your time of birth. If not, check it from your moon sign and from your sun sign. And before I start, though, quick announcement. I'm doing my Rahu and Ketu class with 50% off if you want to have it, because Rahu and Ketu is what causes the eclipses. So for the next 1 week, this course that I've done, this webinar, will be 50% off if you want to buy to understand in depth the mysteries of the south and north node of the moon, which are karmic points, which indicate past lifetimes, which indicate lessons for this lifetime. What you have to let go in this lifetime and what you have to acquire in this lifetime. And also Edwina, Psychic Edwina and Psychic Bobby are doing $10 off for the eclipse special. You can check their services. They're one of our famous psychics. And April is also doing an eclipse special reading. Check out her profile, Astrology reading. So let's delve into this most spectacular eclipse that will be seen from the whole of Europe, big parts of Africa as well. So this will be a very transformational time on the worldly events. It's foreshadowing or foretelling big changes that are going to happen in Europe, in Africa. And because it's eclipse of the moon symbolizes important women. And maybe some important woman will leave her physical body, especially connected somehow to Europe, very likely, because the solar eclipse, the lunar eclipse is happening with the south node, and the south node is known to spiritualize, to detach, to separate body from spirit, or eclipses are known as foreshadowing of big changes, and those big changes going to happen on the territory where the eclipse is seen, as I mentioned, where it is with some important public figures that leave this world possibly, and other global events that you can see their results for the next, because it's going to be the longest lasting eclipse outside the next 6 months. Usually a lunar eclipse, we give it about 3 months influence after that, but this one is the longest, the strongest, so I give it 6 months after that we're going to see all those transformations and changes. And the eclipse is happening together with Mars as well, and Mars is quite violent planet, as we know, and Mars currently is retrograde, is very close to Earth, so its influence is triple. So the violence of Mars, it's intensified, and the anger of Mars is intensified, and the reckless behaviors of Mars are intensified. And Mars is exactly conjunct the moon, which is being eclipsed. And the moon, and it's there with the south node of the moon, which we call Ketu as well in ancient astrology. And Ketu symbolizes past karma. And when it's with Mars, this will be some kind of build up aggressive karma or anger karma, or, of the aggressive actions of humanity and humans that will kind of bubble up and escalate. And I believe that within a few days before and a few weeks after the lunar eclipse, we can see this in the world as an event. Unfortunately, some kind of terrorist attacks can happen that are targeted towards the population, because it's in the sign of Aquarius, and Aquarius rules, the hoi polloi, the normal people, society. And they can be a karmic discharge of build-up aggression and anger and release, because the south node is about releasing something, and it's about the past. And Mars is, of course, the planet of aggression and the planet of action as well. So some kind of build-up karma will be dispensed. Also, it's possible for some earthquakes or something like that shakes things up, not necessarily just human-made actions, but it can be nature-made, because, there was even in Nepal somewhere a few years ago, where they'll do this slaughter of animals, like 5,000 animals for a certain festival that they'll do. It's like thoughtless slaughter of animals, part of the festival. And after that, was it Nepal? I think within a few days of that slaughter, there was a huge earthquakes, actually a few earthquakes. So aggression, violence, anger, which is what Mars is. When it builds up a lot, it can create, and there's been a lot of tension, especially in Europe, in that area, but around the world generally as well, because I think it will be seen even from parts of the States. This build-up aggression and anger, or these violent actions of humans, will be somehow released, or will create even some cataclysms, or nature can kind of, the build-up energy, it needs to release it, whether it's a volcano, whether it's some kind of I cannot predict because I'm not versed in world predictions, but kind of knowing the symbology of the planets, I'm thinking something similar. And on a personal level, though, let's see what the eclipse can bring, because it affects everyone somewhere in their horoscopes. Of course, the people that will feel it the most, that will transform their life and turn it around, are people that have planets somewhere around the 4th degree of Aquarius or Leo, the opposite sign. And you might be a Gemini, but you might have, for example, Saturn at 7 degrees Aquarius. And Saturn is your foundations and structures and things that you hold on to. And these things will have to be released. For example, you might have Venus in Leo and Aquarius around the 4th degree. I give an orb 4 degrees before and 4 degrees after. So if you have anything in the first 10 degrees of Aquarius, whether it's your ascendant, Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, or if you have the 10th house cusp there, basically you can check out, if you know your time of birth, from my birth chart calculator, enter your details. I'm putting a link for it here, and once you enter where you're born, what time, go to the planetary detail table, and you will see ascendant, so you can say Virgo 7 degrees, moon, it can say Aquarius 3 degrees, and you're like, wow, the eclipse falls on my moon. So Aquarius and Leo are the signs that are most strongly influenced, especially if you have anything there from 0 degrees in Aquarius or Leo to around 8-9 degrees, the first 10 degrees. And if it's Venus, it will totally transform your relationships. If it's Mercury, your social life and business. If it's the Sun, it might be your career, important men in your life. If it's the Moon, it's your whole family, personal life, health, important women in your life, like the mother. If it's Saturn, it's your foundation, stability, things that you're holding on that you have to let go of. So each planet gives different influences, so you'll feel it the most, but everyone will feel the eclipse in some level. And for a lot of you that are not specifically affected, with the planet, it will happen still in some area in your horoscope. I mean, if you're Virgo ascendant, it will happen for you in your 6th house, and we'll speak about each sign, what it means. But it is important to check from your ascendant sign, secondly Sun or Moon, and also to know that for most people it will be more on some psychological level. It might not be even especially visible to others outside, because the lunar eclipse is emotional. It's about the feelings, about the inner world, and it's with Ketu, which is a spiritual planet, which some inner processes that will be happening for you. And it will be a process of release. Why is that? Because in mythology, the ancient Vedas described Ketu and Rahu as one dragon that wanted to gain immortality, like the rest of the gods. They are the gods of the planets, the visible planets. Rahu and Ketu are not even a planet. They're points where the Earth ecliptic of the Moon and the Sun intersect. So they wanted to be gods, so they drank and they fooled the gods and they drank. So basically it was just one being, one dragon. So the dragon drank, and it was called demonic being, from the immortality juice, Amrita or something like that it's called. And they became immortal, but the gods got angry, the sun got angry, the sun and the moon got angry that they got the status of godliness, and they cut the dragon in two, and it became Rahu and Ketu, the south and the north node. And that's why the sun and the moon are the mortal enemies of Rahu and Ketu, and they eclipse them occasionally, because the sun and the moon, according to the mythology, cut the dragon in two and eclipsed, and the Rahu and Ketu, the dragon's tail and head, would eclipse the sun and the moon occasionally, creating big changes on the world and creating, because the sun and the moon are the king and the queen, and they regulate the world and life, the life on in the world. And occasionally the light will be eclipsed because new changes and big fated karmic events would have to happen. And this eclipse is caused by the south node, which is the dragon's tail. And so it has this energy of severance. The dragon's tail was cut off from the head. And the dragon's tail just started trashing about and kind of drying out and desiccating and has no direction. So it is about, the Ketu eclipses have an influence of separating you from something, some kind of severance, some kind of, I'm writing here, some kind of disconnection from whatever they're happening in your life. For example, if it's from the fifth house, maybe you get some kind of, you cut out a romantic partner. Or you cut out emotional engagement, or you emotionally disengaged from someone, or if it's in your third house, you might cut out a brother or detach from some argument with a brother or sibling or neighbors or something like that, depending where it's happening. So the theme is about disconnecting from something, about letting go of something. The theme is about because the moon rules our emotions and our emotional attachments, and Ketu eclipses it. So it also allows you to disconnect from certain emotional attachments that are no longer needed in your life and productive, that create much more exhaustion of energy and resources, even if you're clinging onto them for dear life. And say you might be attached to someone, you might be attached to a certain way you look, a certain way you act, to certain aspects of your personality, or to a person, or to an idea, or to a career that is exhausting you, or that it is no longer productive, or it's no longer life sustaining, it's life draining. And that's what the eclipse comes from, to cut off, just like the tail was cut off from the dragon, something that's drying your life force and energy. Even if you think it's sustaining it, you might think, oh, my love for this person is what sustains me, but it drains you out. And Ketu, in a karmic way, comes and says, no more. It's the fated time for you to disconnect from this, or from this part of yourself, or from this part of your body. Sometimes some of you might be shedding, because Ketu is where, and the moon is where we store emotions. The moon, because the lunar eclipse, the moon is where we store the memory, the genetic memory and emotions, and the moon rules the body as well, and the emotions and the body. So this is where we store, it might be past lifetimes memories, it might be early lifetimes memories, it might be just some painful, all kind of feelings that we have, or genetic memories passed down from generations and family, because the moon rules the family as well, are stored somewhere in us. And if they're too much of a heavy burden, and if the eclipse and whatever the eclipse is falling for you, it's going to allow you to disconnect from that pain, or to shed it. And it might involve losing of something. It might involve losing of something material, tangible, psychological, emotional, a person associated with that house, or even some kind of body organ, or it might be stored, for example, in your fat cells. So you might start losing weight, you might start losing hair, you might start, if the memories and the genetic memories are stored in certain body organ, you might have to shed part of it, for example. That's in extreme cases, but it might be like someone wrote to me, they're saying, oh my god, around the eclipse I have to let go of a nail, they're discovered by fungus. Well, you might be actually, it's something small, but it might be where you're storing some of that pain psychologically and emotionally, and that can be like a symbolic release. So on the negative side, you can expect that you might have to surrender something, to lose something. You might have to walk away from something. There might be some loss, some vulnerability. In times like that, people feel vulnerable. When you're shedding your skin, you're vulnerable. When it's a process of shedding your skin, like the lizard, like the dragon that it is. It's a process, because the tail, it excretes, and during the shedding process, which is intensified and sped up for the next 3 months on a personal level, just there is the psychic protection and barriers around the person are kind of weakened. So you have to make sure that you protect yourself psychically, especially if the eclipse falls on some planet or important angle in your horoscope. But whatever house it is, just for the next, at least if it doesn't directly affect you, just it's in some house in your horoscope, within 10 days before the eclipse and 10-15 days after the eclipse, kind of create some protection around you because you're vulnerable. There's some shifting happening. There is some kind of letting go of old identity, of old ego attachments, of old self-identification and parts of your life. You're letting go of them. So this vulnerability, you're left exposed. Something is exuding, something is leaving your aura, your life, so it leaves a hole there. And before you're able to regroup and master your energy, it can allow for predatory energies to come there. So some kind of a protection, maybe a little prayer, maybe being kinder on yourself around the eclipse, maybe being not taking risks, especially because it's with Mars. Mars is predatory planet, very ruthless, and those changes can happen very fast. They can happen very, kind of a bit forcefully, and they can happen, or if they're happening very fast, they can just, they can be sudden, and Mars is also indicates predatory energies, as I said, so they can try and take advantage of you. It might be just psychological or just psychic energies, but it might be an actual person. So try to be more protected, more, easy on yourself, because you're shedding something. And don't worry, after that, the next eclipse on the 11th of August, which is a Rahu eclipse, and Rahu is the dragon's head, which takes, it will start bringing those new things into your life. But first you have to make space for them. And this is what this huge eclipse is doing in certain area of your life, that you're making space for that. And the Rahu eclipse on the 11th of August, for which I made a video, you can check my videos for August to see where you can gain and new things start coming to you through the Rahu eclipse, which are again fated and karmic, and where new desires are strongly awakened. Watch out the August videos. But first you need to kind of detach. You might feel a bit apathetic, you might feel a little bit disconnected, you might feel a little bit like confused around the eclipse, because loss of identity entails some kind of confusion. But I wrote here a wonderful quote which will summarize the point of all this eclipse and all powerful Ketu eclipses, lunar Ketu eclipses. There's the quote that I saw from Spirit Science, which says, to find peace, you have to be willing to lose your connection with the people, places, and things that create all the noise in your life. And that's what Ketu and this eclipse is doing. It's helping you lose the connection with the places, things, substances, people, positions, situations in your life, which are creating this noise. But, it can be a little bit of a like, wow, cutting this. The universe is cutting them forcefully, or you're willingly letting them go, which is the preferred way to surrender to this process. But it can be unsettling, until you know what are you making place for, until you know like what is this vacuum and emptiness going to, that Ketu eclipse is creating, what is it going to entail. But actually, a lot of you will start noticing that when I do the prediction for each signs, a lot of you might say, this has started already, because Ketu, the separator, the shedding, the surrender, the disconnection started happening when Ketu already entered Aquarius gradually, which started 2017 from around May. So in the last 1 year approximately, some of you already started distancing yourself from those areas of your life and releasing them, or completing them, or finishing them, or feeling that they have no control, because Ketu is about, kind of, it's a headless tail, and you don't have control. You don't think with your head there. There's no direction there. Things are out of your hands. They're more karmic. Whatever Ketu passes, things are under kind of let go and let God. They're over the control of more larger powers that are more karmic than us. And you've probably started surrendering in that area, but those periods of surrender intensify during eclipses with Ketu. And again, Ketu will be in that area of your life 19 years from now. So again, you shed further from that area, but this is one of the last chances you have to eliminate the dead wood from that part of your life. And as I said, around eclipses, this process of shedding, of detaching emotionally, of walking away, of surrendering, of cutting out, is intensified for the next, I would say, especially for the next 40 days after the eclipse, and the first 30 days before the eclipse already. For some of you, it has started. You're feeling it. It's happening in your life already. But I would say that you see the full results within 3 months after the eclipse. And so Ketu is like a circuit cutter. It's like when there is an overload, maybe you've taken too much from work, or too much from, you're taking too many responsibilities, or whatever. And all of a sudden there's a breakdown and it cuts off, and Ketu just switches off the lights and remove something from your life, because you blow over, that there'll be system overload, and Ketu creates this disruption of the disconnection of the system, so to speak. And so you can release it. Might put you all of a sudden, so like, stop, I can't do anything, that's it, I have to let go, I have to shed, I have to, and you leave a lot of responsibilities and duties. But the ultimate goal of Ketu is liberation. And I've written here the positive things. There'll be a release, there'll be a liberation, freedom from something. It might be from some responsibility. If, for example, it's in your, so with Saturn, or if it happens in your fourth house, for example, it might be a liberation from some responsibility towards family that's heavy on your property, depending on what house it happens. It's about also completing something, ending something. It's a full moon. Full moons is about seeing the final results of something. And because it's eclipse, it's like, but it's kind of much more fated and intense, and completing, ending of something, and then it will dematerialize, because Ketu is a very spiritual influence. It's the tail where you excrete things, or it's like it's like a portal to the invisible world. It's like a portal to the invisible world. So it's kind of dematerialization and spiritualization of this area of your life. It's something also to be done with something, and usually the Ketu eclipses, you're like, it's not like it happens in a way that you don't have to use willpower. Willpower is more like you don't have to kind of self-control, which is Saturnian in nature. Actually, Mars can give you the push that you've had enough, and Mars makes you angry because Mars is with the eclipse, and it tells you, I've had enough, the initial push, I'm done with it. And Mars is willpower, and actually just initially it's a little bit of a willpower, but after that Ketu is the planet of feeling disconnected, disengaged, disinterested. Maybe for years you are struggling with feelings towards someone, and they're not even in your life, or they're like playing around with you, or it might be, and then finally this eclipse, if it triggers, for example, your seventh house of relationship, or fifth house of emotional, of being in love, and you can be like, that's it. You get angry, Mars, something happens to upset you, Mars, and you're like, I'm done with that. And you kind of disconnect, and you disengage emotionally. It's not going to be like, I'm not going to call him, oh, I love him so much, I hate him, I'm not going to call him, so delete my message here, and then you call all your friends, give me his phone number again. No, it's kind of like, it's emotion. The emotions are eclipsed. The emotions, Ketu hides the emotional attachment, the moon, and Ketu passes over, and you're like, I'm done with it. It might be some addiction, and it might be like, I've reached a tipping point, I'm done with it. And also, it's about selflessness. That area of your life where the eclipse is happening can entail some kind of acts of selflessness where the ego is not involved, because Ketu is a tail. It doesn't have a head. It doesn't think high of himself. It's very actually humble. And it's something where maybe you might be called in that area of your life to do something without expecting back, with selflessly, for some higher purpose, for some more spiritual purpose, to give something rather than to receive. Because Ketu is where you excrete. It's not the head where you take and you eat all the time. The dragon's head is the dragon's tail. So you release something, or you kind of do some selfless act there. You disregard your own needs for someone else. But be careful, again, not to allow vulnerability for predators to take advantage of you. And it's egoless. You shed part of your ego and part of your self-identification connected to that area of your life. And also makes you very psychic in that area of your life, because when the head is severed from the tail, thoughts are stopped. So this is a tail eclipse, as we said, Ketu. Thoughts are stopped. And because of that, when the five senses don't perceive basically impressions from the rest, what happens? You open up to the invisible realm. So you might start receiving psychic messages, and kind of channeling subconsciously somehow. So these are the more positive things that can happen with that egoless release of something, selflessness. All right. So interesting, huh? I hope you understood more in depth how this will affect you. So make sure again to check mostly the ascendant. This is very important, and then the moon, because this lunar eclipse, check where it's happening from the moon and from the sun. And for if you have sun, moon, or ascendant in Aries, it's happening in your 11th house, and I'll put it like an E eclipse. So 11th house is your social circle, Aries. Maybe it's high time you let go of someone. Maybe it makes you, maybe you can't be very socially active. Something is happening now, and you're shedding some friends, and you're releasing attachments to some friends or groups, or identifying with some groups that you belong to, and maybe you become emotionally detached towards some such people that we consider friends, and maybe we can be released from the influence and liberated from the influence of some not very maybe unnecessary social circles or social activities. But the 11th house is also social economic goals. It's a very ambitious house of our material and social goals. Where do you want to climb? Which group do you want to belong to? Which society do you want to belong to? What kind of do you want to be known as, doctor this or doctor that? Or what are your economic goals? This is the house of gains. So maybe you'd also be shedding certain unproductive goals. Maybe there'll be a loss of some long-term goal, or on a positive level, it can be the completion of some goal that you've been working on for a long time, and that you see the final results on, and then you can basically dissolve after that this goal because you've achieved it, and you can be free from some socioeconomic goals that you put yourself as well. And you might have to do something selfless for a friend as well. The 11th house is friends, or for some group of people, or for some large audience, which is the 11th house. And this is definitely the house of gains. Well, kind of how do you combine selflessness with gains? I don't know really. But also you might have to develop a more detached attitude towards friends, more egoless. You might have to do some action that, or shed part of your self-identification and part of your ego and who you think you are, by taking let's say a more by retreating in a role socially somehow, in an egoless way somehow. So there are different ways it can play out, and you might have to, another way it can play out is you've strongly identified with belonging to certain groups, to belonging to certain friends, and because you lose that, or you decide consciously to separate from these people, this kind of, it entails an act of shedding your ego, and it entails an act of humbling yourself, which is what Ketu tends to do, and allowing yourself, allowing maybe even some kind of more kind of merging with the group, sorry, not merging, but disconnecting from the group, but in an egoless way. I don't know how to explain it. Okay, then if you're Taurus, this eclipse, especially Taurus rising or Taurus moon, and lastly Taurus sun, this eclipse is happening in your 10th house here, which is where Aquarius is. So then it means that you might have to disconnect from certain career path or social status. There might be some loss of social status, or there might be emotional disengagement and disconnection from attachment to certain status, from attachment to certain career goals, or there might be the completion of some career goal. Or you might be liberated or freed from some institution, or from some authority figure, or from some boss, or the leaving of a boss, or the loss of a boss authority figure, and also father figures of some sort, or disconnecting with them, or letting go of certain unproductive career choices and directions, let's say. And some kind of transformation happening in your career. Or if you have some leadership leadership responsibilities, you might be shed or liberated from some of them, or you might be asked to do some very selfless and egoless leadership and executive decisions that are not for your own personal interest or whatever, that are for the greater good. And you might be having also kind of psychic direction there as well. But usually it proceeded by some kind of confusion initially, because it's headless Ketu trashing around. So maybe you might have to let go of certain aspects of your career, certain aspects of relationships with authority figures, or certain aspects of your walk away from something like that. Then, if you are Gemini, this eclipse is happening in your 9th house, which is not so bad, but it's about your belief systems. So there is an intensified process of shedding, of letting go, of walking away from unproductive belief systems, from unproductive worldviews, from you might feel like some kind of a faith crisis is happening in you, because something that you've believed as true for a long time might turn out not to be, and this can create like faith crisis, and you might feel quite kind of vulnerable about your beliefs. And the 9th house is also your vision for the future, so there might have to be the surrender of some vision about your future, the surrender of some ideals that you have, the surrender of some beliefs if they were too naive or that are not practical for you, that are not realistic for you anymore. Those beliefs, beliefs serve us. Beliefs are not something that's ultimate. Beliefs is something that serves us at this moment to fulfill and to have a meaningful life. And its time has come where you're shedding certain beliefs, and this process gets intensified and you get detached. Maybe there can be detachment from some kind of studies that you've been doing, detachment from some kind of guru you've been following, detachment from some kind of inspirational figure that you've been following, or religion, and maybe letting go of strong religious preferences, and even kind of becoming apathetic towards it, in some sort. But it's necessary process. But they can also indicate that you are released from wrong beliefs, that you are liberated from false gurus and teachers, or mentors. 9th house is coaches, mentors, or maybe you've outgrown them. Maybe they're not false. They're right for someone at a certain level of their development. But for you, you've outgrown those beliefs, you've outgrown those outlooks, and you're letting them go. And maybe you can complete some vision, and that's why you have to let it go. And the 9th house is your plans for the future. So they might be changing in some way. And the 9th house is your higher education as well. So it means that maybe some of you might be completing some higher education degree, or some of you might be completing, or some of you might be letting go of such, thing. And 9th house is foreign countries, and foreigners and people from, coaches, mentors, such kind of figures. They can be like, letting go, release, connected to such people. And what do I say? Also psychic. The 9th house is the direction from God that we see, omens from God of some sort. How God can talk to us through coaches, through advisors, through inspirational books, but also just through our high intuition. And because you become more psychic, you can receive powerful downloads or powerful, basically, because the head is stopped. Remember, as I said, the head is cut off during this eclipse, in a sense, because it's with Ketu. And because of that, you're more open to psychic influences. You don't use the 5 senses, but directly perceive information. So because of that, you can receive some direction for your future vision, and for your future plans, and for the future meaning in your life. Also, you might have to do some selfless acts in a foreign country. So you might have to do some egoless or selfless acts towards a father figure or a teacher of some sort as well, and humble yourself there. All right, if you're Cancer, then it is happening in your 8th house, the eclipse. Okay, and that's other people's resources. So maybe this process, as I said, has already started. Ketu has been in the 8th house for the last year. But now there will be intensification, shedding or letting go of resources that you have mutually with another person. Also, letting go maybe of some assets that come to you. That, like, maybe you're married and you have to let go of your mutual assets if you're separating, or maybe letting go of attachment and reliance on income from somewhere else, from someone else. Maybe they can be loss of income of your partner or through money of partner, but maybe because you're being prepared to open new channels, because the eclipse in August will be in your 2nd house, to open new channels for money that you can create yourself over the next 6 months after that. So even if there are some losses here through people that owe you money that comes to you through others, whether it's through a bank, through a loan, through a scholarship, through money from your parents or your partner somehow, or possessions and resources together, or maybe if you work with people, it's their resources, like their talents, their skills, you might lose some of those, or maybe money coming to you through clients, but or through some business partners. But don't worry, because the new eclipse after that, the solar eclipse in the 2nd house, will open new channels for you personally to create resources that are not so reliant on others. On another level, 8th house is our obsessions. 8th house is the house where we kind of we we something that has control over us. And how beautiful that this eclipse is about disconnecting, cutting, and switching off, and letting go. So maybe some of you will be able to surrender some obsessive thoughts or something that has control over you. You can let it go, and you can walk away from something or someone. It might be a situation, it might be a thing, it might be a person that is trying to control you, manipulate you, take your power away in some way. And you'll be able to let go of it and release it. And you can be free from such controlling influences. You can be free from such predatory influences. Release yourself. Be done with such predatory or manipulative influences. Person, substance, anything. And you might have, though, to do something for someone else, like give money to someone else, for example. You might have to do selflessly to help someone else with their resources, for example. That's preferable, rather than have losses there. 8th house is our intimacy, very deep intimacy. This is the house of sexual union with another person. This is not the sex just to relieve yourself to come. This is sex that when you're bonded with another, the deep intimacy and trust between two people. And you might be releasing certain fears connected to you distrusting, someone. You might be releasing also some traumas. 8th house is house of traumas, where we store pain, by the way. And elimination. 8th house is the house of elimination, and Ketu eclipse is happening there. You might be eliminating painful memories, painful attachments, and Ketu can be helping you release them, or if you don't have the strength, it can force you to release them, because they're no longer productive. And it's some kind of a rebirth is going to be happen for you after that, because the 8th house is the house of death and rebirth. And 8th house is the house of clinging to other resources. So it wants to liberate you, not to be dependent on other resources. 8th house is sexual attachments. Have you heard of courts between people? Sometimes you might have had sex with someone maybe 2-3 times, or maybe they were their partner, and years later you're still dragging their energy, because they're cords that form between people when they're sexually intimate. You sometimes can pick up other people's mental fears and phobias, or obsessions, or addictions, or illnesses. Even, as we know, physically you can pick up illnesses through sex. I'm not saying sex is bad, but you can pick up psychic things as well, and you're kind of bound to the karma a little bit of that person as well. Well, 8th house is this, and that this eclipse there can help you disconnect with the cord from such people. So I would advise to do some little ritual. Do you still have obsession with someone? Are you still thinking about someone? Are you still attached deeply towards someone, but you want to be released? Well, this eclipse, do it then. Ketu cuts, remember, Ketu is split, it's cut off, it's the tail. Do it, and I would advise you, one that I know, take a black onyx stone, because the black absorbs, the onyx absorbs. Put it under your line, under a pad, even if it's not, your period, doesn't matter if you don't have period, put it around the eclipse there and carry it for about a week, because it drains out these cords that you're connected with someone on a psychic level with, and it can liberate you emotionally from someone. Okay. All right, then if you are Leo, wow, well, then Leos, especially the first 10 degrees Leos, well, Leos, it's happening in your seventh house, the eclipse. You can be liberated from a person. You can be liberated from you can walk away from some business partnership or from some agreement that, as I said, is draining more life force from you than it's giving you. It's that it's not spiritually productive for you anymore. You can be free from some relationship. You can be liberated from some obligation towards another. Seventh house is not just relationships, it's obligation towards others, it's contractual mutual responsibilities people take, is contractual relationships, is any contract. It can be a client, it can be a business partner, it can be a marriage partner, it can be a committed partnership. Some part of that relationship is dying out, or something unproductive from it has to be cut out, and so this unbalance can be resolved, and you can be done with someone. Might be a client, you're like, I'm done with you. It can be you can complete a relationship or business deal, or if you've been working on some business deal, very important one, you can complete it now, and then it can dissolve into the invisible world, because Ketu dissolves. But it's something that you finish. You're not going to work on it after that. It can give great results if you've been working strong on it till then. The final results of this business deal or this business transaction can be very good, but you're complete and done with it after that. But you might have to surrender certain aspect of your relationship, or certain expectations in regards to relationships. Or maybe you're strongly self-identified with the person. You think, my life, like, I cannot be without this person, but now the universe says, like, no, this person is no longer necessary for you, so there is loss. And of course you might feel vulnerable here because of that shedding of that relationship, or identification with that relationship. But it also can help you feel like emotional, because the moon is feelings, remember. Ketu eclipses, and Ketu is about disengagement. It allows you to emotionally disengage from a relationship maybe you've wanted for a long time, but you didn't have the strength. You tried over and over, and willpower just doesn't work. And now finally you become apathetic. You're like disinterested. It's no longer a struggle. You just emotionally disengage. Or it might be that your partner turns like that, because it's happening in the seventh house, and that your partner disengage somehow, or that there is some in their life, that there is that or it's not necessarily that they disengage from you. If you're married, it might be that some big transformation is happening in the life of your partner. Maybe they need to give something from themselves. Maybe they need to disconnect from something. Maybe they're leaving a big chapter of their life behind them. Maybe they're making a big change in their life. They're shedding something. It might be weight, it might be a career, it might be some self-identity, and be done with something. But because it's your seventh house, it kind of, you seeing what's happening in the life of your partner, and you're witnessing it. Or maybe you might be asked to do some selfless act towards a partner. That's on the higher level of Ketu eclipses. Selflessly, in the worst case scenario, can be a loss of partnership, but in the best case scenario, some selfless act toward a partner, where you have to be egoless towards your partner, and yeah, so, or some egoless towards a client or business relationship of some sort. All right, but karmic fated events connected to relationships can be happening, and sometimes even people around the eclipse a few days before can meet fated and karmic relationships, especially if your ascendant, sun, or moon is around the fourth degree of Leo. And it's usually a karmic relationship, meaning you've met before. But usually it's about the contract running out. You've had a contract with someone, you've fulfilled your responsibilities towards each other, so now bye-bye. Or if you attract a new relationship during this period, this relationship, it has the qualities that this person might help you, or that you might have to help them in some way selflessly, and it might even last for a long time because it's karmic, but it's something that it has to be completed from a past lifetime. And don't worry, even Ketu is making space in your seventh house, but it's because after that there will be a solar eclipse, which is new beginnings with Rahu, to gain something in your first house. It's about becoming independent. It's about doing things on your own, and it's about getting your own power back into yourself. So even if you kind of feel vulnerable, there's some loss to a relationship, you'll gain again some after that some new opportunity through your own self. If you lose a business partner or client or whatever, it will a certain facet of your relationships. You will gain it by self-reliance and new opportunities opening for you that you can take on your own. All right, if you're Virgo, this eclipse is happening in your sixth house. And again, it's about letting go, and sixth house is known as the house of addictions, especially to substances, because it's something that sixth house is anything that brings our body out of balance, and it's anything that that is chemical in compositions, and that's affecting us. So anything that we do to certain unhealthy way. So on a positive level, it can be release, liberation, freedom from some kind of addiction, and it can be also mental addiction of some sort. So if you're trying to release certain addiction, make some ritual, make a prayer. It's a very good time for it. It might be a substance addiction, it might be sugar addiction, it might be I don't know, some kind of, I don't know what it's called, work addiction, but it kind of bit, and because you've been overdoing it, and now Ketu, as I said, I explained, it gives a short circuit, and it stops the whole. There is system overload with your body and something happens that pushes you, forces you, or suddenly, or you're kind of emotionally disengaged from it, and you cut off an addiction or a bad habit. Sixth house is our health habits, so it's like a final and you've been doing this process. I believe that many Virgos, especially Virgo risings, because Ketu has been in your sixth house for a year already, have been going through that process gradually, but now there is an intensification of the shedding process because of the powerful eclipse. And you might be done with some bad habit. You might be done with some kind of health problem that you've had, and you're like, that's it, I cannot tolerate this habit. And sixth house health problems are ones that we cause by our lifestyle. They're not karmic, they're not like some incurable disease. Well, they might be termed incurable by our medicine, like autoimmune stuff, but they're our own doing. They're due to our own actions. The food we eat, how much stress we get. So you might be able to kind of disconnect finally from the association with that illness, because a lot of people actually addicted emotionally to their illness. They're like, they self-identify, oh, I'm a diabetic. Well, diabetes is reversible. My whole family, my dad had it, he reverses it with eating plant-based diet. It's, well, I'm not saying for 100% for everyone, but a lot of diseases that are considered unreversible are reversible. They're lifestyle diseases. We just have to change that lifestyle. And you might be finally kind of disconnect on a positive level and be done with the self-identification as a sick person, like, oh, I'm diabetic. Well, you disconnect emotionally. So a lot of people, as I said, have emotional connection to their illness almost. That can be on a positive level. On a negative level, well, eclipse in the sixth house can bring to the surface some illness. So, I'm not going to prophesy such things, but on a positive level, there can be a loss of illness, detachment from some unhealthy and balanced state. Just you feel like, I'm done with it. It's not like some, oh, I have to stop smoking, and well, maybe you've been doing it, trying to do it till now like that, but now something happens, and this eclipse kind of creates emotional disconnection, or even you can leave it or take it, apathetic, disinterested. It drains the vitality of that addiction, and you kind of transform and shed. And but the sixth house is also work. On another level, it can mean like that you're overworked and or you kind of reach the tipping point, and there is a short circuiting and cutting of the cutting suddenly of a work or work duty and responsibility. The sixth house is the house of our duties. So suddenly you're like, okay, had enough, or maybe you're not aware of it, and the universe cuts you off from a certain duty or through a certain work because it's not productive for your spiritual growth anymore, and you walk away from your job, you emotionally detach from a job, and be done with a job. Or on another level, you might be asked to do some selfless job, some selfless duty and responsibility um, uh, towards someone or something. You might complete a job on another positive level over the next few months after the eclipse. Some you can complete and wrap it up and be done with it. Complete some work that requires attention to detail and a lot of focus, mental power. That can be a good manifestation of this eclipse. Um, and the sixth house is also our enemies. Well, what it can indicate is that you're done with some enmity, that you complete some sixth house in the house of court cases where you're fighting with someone, conflict rules, some war, conflict. Well, you might release some enmity, you might release some kind of conflict, you might release some competition with someone or some negative feelings towards someone you've been working on. You can be done with them and just walk away from this conflict of some sort. Walk away from some competition or some court case or some litigation case that's reached a tipping point, and you're like, that's it. Surrender to this process in some way. On another level, you can kind of surrender. You have an addiction, you say, it's more powerful than me, I've tried to stop it, I can't, and you let go and you surrender, and then God does his magic there. It's kind of acceptance, surrender, and you become the observer, because Ketu is here to teach us the most spiritual lessons. Through its eclipses, they intensify that. Oftentimes we're just watchers, that we kind of, things happen to us, we think we run this life, but we're just observers and life, and we just sit here and watch a movie being projected in front of us. As soon as we kind of accept and perceive this, and we become like a witness to our life, rather than get so emotionally involved and dramatic and everything is a matter of life and death and it's like woo woo woo. But when you watch a movie, you don't go, yeah, you can cry for the character or whatever, but you don't self-identify so strongly with it. You're like an observer. And this is when we become spiritual. This is true spirituality, realizing that you're here to watch a movie. And this is what Ketu can help you, whether it's with an addiction, sixth house with this eclipse, or whether it's with some unhealthy enmity that you're having. Sixth house is the house of problems, so it can be a positive, you know um, eclipse, that it disconnects you from a self-association with certain problems, but it engages shedding a big part of your ego, because a lot of us self-identify with our problems. This problem is me, I'm this. But there can be some kind of apathy now. I'm like, I've reached, and that's the first step. You reach a final tipping point and you're like, I can't do anything about it. It is what it is. I'm just gonna sit and observe the universe unfold, whatever it's meant to happen. And that's when things align. Actually, but it doesn't mean live a life like a apathetic slob. And like, oh, if it's just a movie, I can just sit here and take potato couch. Life is about doing always your best, but leaving the results and being neutral towards the results and leaving it in God's hands, and knowing that you might have those expectations, but actually God has a different plan for you. And when you adapt this attitude, it's called karma yogi, something like that. I'm not sure exactly, but you do your best always. You're not a sloth, and you become detached towards the results, and you leave it in God's hands. Anyway, this can help you. I've been on this rant to tell you that this is something that can happen to some extent for some of you Virgos. All right, if you are, so sixth house is debt, you might be released from some debt on a positive level. You see, difficult houses with difficult eclipses can actually, two minuses can cancel itself out. All right. Then if you're Libra, it's happening in your fifth house. Well, can it mean Libra rising in particular? It can mean that they might be cutting out of some romantic partner. It can be walking away from a romantic partner. It can be like the universe cuts this partner away, and you can start just feeling emotional disconnection, and maybe because you've been disappointed enough, and you're like, it is what it is, I'm letting it go. Or maybe kind of accepting that your romantic life at this point is at this level, and reconciling with it. Maybe there is no one coming romantically, and you just kind of like, this eclipse can help you develop that state of consciousness that is more detached, that is more uh, accepting, that it's not ego involved, so you're like, well, it doesn't make me less of a person, because often people think when they don't have a romantic partner, they're less of a person. And now it's kind of this egoless process is happening. And that's actually, the next, maybe this is exactly what can, once we remove these emotional attachments and self-identifications and expectations, which Ketu sheds, which the eclipse of Ketu sheds, we can open limitlessness through this house. No boundaries, because there is no resistance all of a sudden, because you've surrendered there. You've surrendered about your love life or about a love relationship. Maybe it's not this one that's gonna happen for it, or maybe, when you sometimes surrender and let go, this is when things actually start happening to you. But you might be going through this process first that feels like a loss of a relationship or romantic partnership, sorry, of romantic attachments, or uh, of apathy towards pursuing such even. And as I said, this is when the magic can happen after that. You might be also shedding and releasing certain aspects of your romantic life. It might be, for example, in a way that that you don't have to realize that you don't have control about your romantic life, and accepting this, that you cannot always be in control, and accepting this again can open doors for you. On another level, the fifth house is having fun, and possibly a process started almost like a year ago where you are not able to have as much fun and enjoyments and entertainments as much as you want, because Ketu empties that house, and maybe you even kind of they kind of became disconnected for such kind of experiences, and maybe this thing intensifies now, and you realize that, well, I'm not so attached, and I don't constantly need entertainments and amusements and attachments, and you become okay with that, and you're like, you accept it somehow, and because of that you open the door and limitlessness for these things to come to you. But as long as the moment you accept it and you're okay with it, and you're, it is what it is. I surrender. I might not be having as much fun or whatever, or romantic partners. Then it can flood into your life, or you might kind of have to. Fifth house is children. And you might realize that you're not fully in control with children, and you might have to surrender or let go of your expectations of how your children have to be, of your expectations of how, how. Kind of how things should be with them, uh, and in some cases it might be people that are letting go of a child, like a child moving to live away, or growing up, and some kind of, it's a peak period now that you have to release them somehow, or you have to create emotional disengagement through certain expectations about your children. Or maybe your child might be going through some period of transformation, shedding old skin, you know uh, but don't worry, and also some creative, um, uh, some amusements and entertainments that are no longer so if people ask you, how do you have fun, and you say, oh, I go drink, or oh, I go, I don't know, fishing, or I bicycle. Well, you might have to let go of such kind of way of having fun, or attachment to certain hobby or to certain way of amusing yourself and entertaining yourself, because it's it's no longer, basically you don't feel the fire and the passion for it. You just let it go, and you release it, and so you see that you're not actually, that this is not such a big deal in your life. And don't worry, after that, the next eclipse, Rahu in the 11th house, will open new opportunities for you for the next few months, from August onwards, which are connected to creating new friendships, which are connected to creating new socioeconomic goals, maybe new source of gains. So maybe you might have to forsake some of your amusements and some of your, hobbies and fun things. But don't worry, maybe new gains will appear here and new socioeconomic goals and new social circle as well. And you can benefit through those things from the next eclipse. So surrender, and you can be liberated and freed from some kind of unhealthy romantic relationship or romantic expression or some kind of unhealthy way of having fun. You can be done with some asshole romantic partner. Or you might also be called to do some selfless act. The high manifestation of the South Node Gate is some selfless act in regards to a child, in regards to a romantic partner of some sort, surrendering yourself there and acting selflessly, giving away from yourself, because Ketu's tail, it gives only, never receives. And you have to adopt an attitude of egolessness, without ego towards a romantic partner, towards a child, if you don't want to be frustrated. Otherwise, they can become a great source of frustration. But when you let go of the ego, and you kind of, it is what it is. This is kind of egoless, and I'm not gonna defend myself and try to force my willpower and my desires there. And it's gonna start flowing. So kind of adopting this eclipse can bring this kind of consciousness and attitude in your life towards those fifth house activities. Or maybe it's some creative projects that you're completing it, you're wrapping it up, or maybe romance fizzling out, or maybe creative project that you're wrapping up or completing, and you dissolve it after that and it's released. That's another way it can play out. Or you might have to let go of some creative project or some hobbies because of other things. All right, then if you are or maybe you have to let go, it's not necessarily even to let go of a lover. How it can, I've seen it sometimes plays that you just let go of your attachment to a certain aspect of the romantic relationship, or attachment to a certain expectations of how romance can be done. Like you get frustrated that your partner, for example, you're romantic and you expect flowers or something, and every time your partner doesn't do that, you're like, something in me dies, and you get upset that they're not meeting your romantic expectations. And all of a sudden this eclipse happens, and you start kind of, maybe it's already started as a process, but you kind of accept that it is what it is. This is what you're going to receive romantically from this partner, and you kind of reconcile with it, you surrender to it, and that's what you can open the doors of limitlessness after that. And it creates this apathetic or non-resistant state, which is what Ketu requires. And then you don't feel that pain. I know it's not the answer to everything, like give up, but that's what is required now. All right. And you accept it and you feel liberated. You feel liberated of trying to fix and have those romantic things. If you're Scorpio, then the eclipse is happening in your fourth house. Scorpio rising in particular. Well, you might be letting go to attachment to parents. You might be letting go of a place where you're living. You might be releasing some place of living. You might be releasing some kind of a attachment to a place that you belong to. You might even involve, for some of you, literally relocation of some sort. Or they might be letting go of and things that are a little bit out of your control, connected with your family or property. And they might be, because Mars is involved, like some accidents and stuff that happen. So just be careful in regards to that. But you have to adopt an attitude of disengagement, an attitude of emotional disengagement, and actually it is what it is. Maybe because you cannot, maybe it might even require you not being able to spend much time with family, because after that the other eclipse, with the solar eclipse, which happens in your 10th house, can bring new opportunities for career, for social status. But first you have to let go of certain attachments or certain duties and responsibilities, or certain um, family entanglements of some sort, And so it might be something to do with your home that you are done with, or with family members that you're done with, or that you might be completing something in your home and in your life environment, or you might be cutting out something. You might be like pulling down a room of your house. It's like almost like fourth house is property, so like to cut out something from the property, or to be done with certain behaviors in your family and family members. And in the worst case scenario, they can be lost connected through property or family member, or emotional disengagement from activities with them. Um, and it's good to kind of adopt an attitude of surrender to the events happening in regards to family, place of living. But on a more psychological level, these are your memories, your feelings, your emotions. This is the core, the emotional core of the horoscope. Your emotional attachments, your own emotional needs. So you might be kind of disconnecting from some hurt or some pain, or you might be cutting out some emotional feelings that have been too heavy and burdened on you. And so that can be a heavy liberation from emotional burden of some sort. That's on a positive level, and you can feel free from. You might even kind of cut off some kind of karmic, uh, something that's been family karma can be cut out from your life. Something that's been dragging in your family for generations. Maybe every woman in your family got divorced, or or and there's like something that's called like a family curse. It's not truly a family curse, it's just repeating patterns. And you might finally disengage from such repeating behaviors. And you can disengage from this kind of pattern of your family and your ancestors and your roots. And you be done with that, so you break the pattern in regards to that. All right, so if you are Sagittarius, it's happening in your third house, the solar eclipse. Sorry, the lunar eclipse. So it might be about cutting off connections with siblings, third house rules siblings, walking away from some friendships. Third house is connected to friends, and maybe walking away and cutting uh, on another level, just some kind of unnecessary part, or some um, unhealthy behaviors connected to relationship with siblings, with neighbors, with relatives, some unhealthy situation with such people. You might cut off yourself from such environment of your everyday social interactions in some way, and just it might be workmates as well, playmates, workmates, schoolmates. You might just let go of certain people there, or just become emotionally disengaged from them. Or you might walk away from some small group activity. You're working on some project with a group of people. You're like, oh, I'm done with it, and walk away and let go of it. And third house is communication. And so there might be some kind of the ending of some communication with someone. Third house is marketing, advertising, uh, and any kind of techniques we use for sale, and sales techniques and business administrative techniques. Well, there might be some kind of need to flush out certain of those techniques and release them because they're not productive anymore. uh, and explore different options and more foreign techniques, in different, that comes from a different mindset, because the eclipse in the ninth house, the solar eclipse that comes in August, will give you a very different belief system and different perspective, and that can help you, kind of compensate for flushing out those old techniques, for example, because third house is not so significant, or it might be that you're flushing out some kind of a vehicle, or letting go, or losing, or releasing, maybe throwing out your bicycle, it can be, or maybe communication devices, third house as well, maybe throwing out an old phone, letting go, loss of a old phone or any communication device. This is how it can manifest. But you can be freed from kind of more unproductive relationships with all those third house people, as I said. They can be some kind of letting go, or sometimes it's just letting go, separation with such people, that they leave or exit your life in some way. Okay. Then if you're Capricorn, it's happening in your second house, Capricorn rising in particular, and the eclipse is here. So that's about, I can tell you that around the eclipses, when they were happening in my second house a few years ago, that's when I left all my possessions and belongings. Second house is money, resources, and everything that I've accumulated for 16 years, I kind of left it in another country. And I kind of disconnected, disengaged, surrendered possessions and things that you self identify as this is mine, you know. So you have to develop an egoless, kind of egoless and detachment towards something. If best if you do it consciously, maybe you just go and donate clothes of yours, maybe just go and donate things that and valuables that are just dragging you down, you know, that are taking your peace of mind. Because if you don't do it consciously, the universe can, with this eclipse, deprive you from some of them, so they can give you, so it can give you peace of mind. And if some assets, some valuables, some possessions, if it's good to come kind of selflessly give away to someone, um, you know, if not, it can be taken away a little bit by force. Don't make financial risks during that period for you, Capricorn. It's a good idea not to. Uh, but even if you have to surrender something about your resources, about your uh, money, or if you have to surrender some kind of source of income or some kind of attachment to some possession, or you can even develop just emotional disengagement from certain material things in your life. And if you do it, don't worry, because after that, the other eclipse, the solar eclipse in August, which is happening in on the 11th of August and is active 6 months after that, will bring you new sources of income or new valuables that come to you through others. Almost like by letting go of something, you'd open the door for a new client, so that you'd open the door for resources coming from a partner, from other different or business partners or other different sources. Okay, and second house is also one's self-worth, and you might kind of and it's food. On another level, you can start to kind of surrender or kind of be free from, remember, second house, what we put in our body. So you can start a diet that is free from, that eliminates, that cuts out certain food groups, that kind of and in this way it's not like a laws that was imposed on you in the universe, because in the negative sense it might be like, oh, you develop some allergy, now you can't eat dairy, bleh. You know, but if you willingly do, okay, I'm cutting out dairy, I'm cutting out this, and some of you might be even that you develop this interest towards certain food groups and towards certain foods. Like you might develop emotional, you, if you've been obsessed about certain food or about, you know, what you put in your body, it might be drink, it might be alcohol, whatever it is, you might kind of develop some kind of disconnection or emotional disengagement from that thing and become disinterested, or it might be taken away from you because it's long overdue, what you put in your body, what the food that you put, you know. uh, and yeah, you kind of have to surrender in regards to that. All right. And if you're Aquarius, of course, Aquarius feels it the most. Everything that we've been talking about, it can happen at any level of your life. The eclipse is in your sign, Aquarius, at 4 degrees. The first 10 degrees Aquarius are rocking it. My ascendant is at 3, 3 to 5 degrees of Aquarius. Bam. Okay, let's see. The ascendant, or if it's your sun there, let's start with the different possibilities. If it's your sun in Aquarius, you might have to let go of some kind of career path or some goal in life, because the sun represents those things, and be done with or release it. Or it might be some important male figure that is leaving your life, or you're done with, or you release them in some way, or that you have to develop a kind of surrendered state towards, and that you're like, oh, it is what it is, the situation with this smell, or the situation with this male, not with this smell, with this male figure, or this authority figure, with this boss figure, or with this career, the sun rules all those things, or with this goal of mine, it is what it is, I'm accepting it, you know, dissolving it, moving on. uh, and be careful, because the sun is also your vitality. There might be temporary loss of that vitality. But also it's kind of, we have to shed certain old goals and careers and plan and kind of, how do I say, uh, however we whatever we want to create in order to create something more authentic in our life. And this is this shedding that's happening. Also, you can be freed from some male figure, dominant male figure. You can be freed from some relationship with the male. You can be done with it. Or you might be asked to do something selflessly through your career. The sun is one's career. You see, selfless. Or something egolessless in regards to a father figure or a male figure in your life. Also, it can be, just be careful for your health, always vitality, health, accidents. Mars is kind of your, the sun is your immune system generally. So be careful around the eclipse and the few days after, or a couple of weeks, for your health generally. But there is some shading of your ego. The sun is the ego. And it's with this eclipse, you're detaching emotionally from certain ego identification, from who you think you are, from strong attachments to, and it might be even something in your appearance, in your whole life that changes, and you're asked to do something egolessly, to put yourself in second place, to surrender yourself to something. But don't worry, because the next eclipse will be in your seventh house, so you'd gain something through another person. Even if you find yourself getting weaker now, and you find yourself like you're putting yourself second for something, or you're doing something selflessly, or surrendering to some process you have no control over, and you're not following the goals that you really want, but you have to do something else, well, accept it, because something else that is actually more, that will bring you something that's not going to waste your energy, it's going to come to you through another person. If it's your moon there, of course, and it's for everyone, but your moon can be something that you're letting go, something in regards to family, to relation, to family, to emotional disengagements, emotional disengagement from everything. If you're a sun, moon, or ascendant on those degrees, watch the whole first introductory part, Aquarius, because this is the most relevant for you. The whole introductory part, every single word is valid for you. Okay, but if you're basically Aquarius, especially the sun, moon, or ascendant, around those degrees in particular, but every ascendant, you might have to let go of certain, it might be letting go of weight, you might be letting go of body part of some sort. It might be something simple as cutting hair. It might be something simple as nail. Well, it's not gonna be as mundane as clipping your nails, but might be losing a nail, cutting hair, losing weight, appendix, something. If you're storing the karma, if you store some kind of build up energy that drags you down, you might have to shed it, or shed an old appearance. You might shed an old appearance and form a new one after that. But definitely you will feel like your life is not fully in your hands, like you have to surrender to a certain process of shedding, and something is happening like this butterfly process. It's like you're almost entering a cocoon stage now, Aquarius, where you're kind of closed in that cocoon, and you're thinking like, oh my god, am I restrained? I don't see anything, I don't understand what's happening, why am I here, am I dying? It's not going to be so extreme, of course, but you're not sure what's happening, and then you come out like a butterfly and you're freed, because Ketu, as forming eclipse for the moon, it's completing some old stage in your life. You're wrapping this old stage in your life. You're kind of, as I said, that's why you think you might be like this butterfly that is still in the cocoon. But once you're out, it's liberation. You're free from, you've shed an old skin. You've shedded an old skin. It might be through appearance, and you might do symbolic things like change your appearance, like change the whole direction of your life, like change, like shedding of a strong self-identification. A strong part of your ego is being shed, because your sign is you. Whether it's your sun, moon, or ascendant, these are very powerful parts of ourselves which you self-identify with. But now this eclipse is asking you to lose the ego identification, to forget who you are, not to try to hold on to your old identity, because this old identity is dying. These old attachments, it might be addictions, it might be like you're like, oh, who are you? And you say like, oh, I'm an astrologer. Well, no, you'll be someone else. Like, let go of this. So who are you? I love to drink wine, for example. Someone says that. They're like, something is happening. This kind of lifestyle, this kind of uh, self-identification is dying down, and you think like you're dying, and you think life will never be excited again, or life will never be the same. But actually, this is the liberation process. I'm promising you, this is not an invitation into, this is not a prediction uh, uh, for lack. This is not a prediction for uh, you know restriction. This is a prediction for abundance eventually, because as I said, you are being reborn uh, into a new uh, kind of lighter being, with less ego, with less attachments. The process, it might be painful that is happening, but it's totally about freedom after that, from liberation. So you might be eliminating something from your life. It might be certain foods, it might be certain lifestyles, it might be certain directions for you, everything. It might be from every area of your life, certain career goals, certain self-identification. It affects you on so many levels, because the first house is you, and everything that you self-identify with, depending on your personal horoscope. So a big shift is happening, which involves letting go and shedding of something. And don't worry, something will come to you from other sources. Surrender, allow this, selfless, be more spiritual. You're much more likely to be vulnerable. Protect yourself, and with prayer, be there in a spiritual place. Ketu is a very spiritual planet, and don't worry, the plan will unfold. The plan will unfold. This butterfly is going to fly off the cocoon very soon. All right. So what happens if you're Pisces? Then it's happening in your 12th house. Make sure, if you're Pisces, to check that you don't have Venus or Mercury in Aquarius. Often many Pisces would have Venus or Mercury in Aquarius. And if you happen to have one of those two planets in Aquarius, the eclipse affects you more personally, especially in the first 10 degrees of Aquarius. It can be the shedding of a relationship for Venus, friendship with Mercury, or some business, or depending what houses Venus or Mercury rule in your horoscope. For this, you probably need a more specific reading. April is offering those readings, Eclipse Special Checkout, so she can tell you what area of your life is being shed off, and to release it, not to struggle with it. And also Bobby and Edwina making, as I said, readings, $10 off on the eclipse. But sorry, my marketing hat was on. I'm taking it off, focusing just on you. Eclipse in your 12th house, guys. It's kind of behind you. 12th house are things. 12th house, first of all, the most spiritual house of the invisible world. And Ketu, that causes this eclipse, is like a psychic portal. Is the most spiritual house, is the most psychic house of all. And it becomes like a double psychic spiritual influence, Pisces. And you're already spiritual and psychic. As you capture signals like no other. I predict that you psychic skills and abilities will be at such a heightened state. You might be, I don't say you're going to hear voices and stuff, but you're going to have feelings. You're going to this 12th house, and this Ketu, which is spiritual influence, is opening psychic portals, because Ketu and Rahu are like a black and white hole. They open holes towards other dimensions, and the 12 houses, those are the invisible worlds. You can be, and Ketu, remember, is about, it's a tail without a head. So there is no thinking, there's just direct witnessing, and that's why Ketu is the planet that opens psychic abilities, because it has no head. You switch off the 5 senses and perception, so you switch your portals towards this world, so you go within, introspective, introverted, because you don't have those senses. So all of a sudden, and the connection to the world is disconnected with the Ketu eclipse. So you start getting those psychic impulses. So some of you might have powerful, imaginative, intuitive downloads, maybe even like ancestor or some discarnated being that wants to work through you, that has maybe a book prepared or maybe some project or invention. You can download it, you can see it. Your dreams will be amazing. Your dreams can give you answers to long sought for questions. Basically, for you, this eclipse is all about mysticism, occultism, spirituality, and receiving answers from the invisible realms, and actually even getting a psychic reading, because the things align for you that psychically you are aligned to receive instructions from ancestors and from invisible spirits, because Ketu opens that portal for you, this eclipse, but also you're more psychically vulnerable. And you are shedding some old things and feelings. 12th house, the house of past lifetimes, Pisces. So you're shedding and you're being cut off, and it's kind of disconnecting old past life experiences which are influencing this lifetime for you. For example, you might have a phobia of water or small spaces. Like me, I cannot go into an elevator. I have to walk to the 70th floor because I have panic attacks of small spaces. And there is no reason in this lifetime why. So usually if you have some paranoia, some fear, or self-sabotaging behaviors that are not explainable at all with this lifetime, or you had a good childhood, whatever, it's something that's buried in the subconscious, often connected to a past lifetime. Or maybe you have a pain, unexplicable pain in your back, and doctors say, well, everything's okay with your back. Maybe you were shot in the back last time, or some trauma happened to you, and you subconsciously carry it there, in this part of the body. So things connected to past lifetimes or memories that are buried, that are directly influencing you in this lifetime, whether through pain, whether through self-sabotaging behaviors that are unexplicable, maybe through fears and paranoias. Well, you're cutting out something like that from your life. This eclipse is releasing it, is sucking it out, and it's expelling it, basically, this thing. So it's emotionally disconnecting you and disengaging you from the connection that's of these feelings and those past experiences that they're releasing you. So it's a very powerful releasing period for you. Cleansing, letting go of something, surrendering, and I would advise you to do some kind of a cord cutting ceremony if you want, or disconnecting you from past life karma. Maybe you made a vow in a past lifetimes of celibacy, and you wonder why you're 30 and you haven't had sex, or you don't have a relationship. Or maybe you made a vow of poverty, you were in some nunnery or something, and you're wondering why you don't have money. Well, those vows and those kind of things from past lifetimes, they can hold in the next life until you kind of consciously say, okay, I let you go, and you can't know because you don't remember your past lifetimes. But if there is anything, just basically that you've noticed, that like a fear, or like that constantly is dematerializing your life, or it's not manifesting. 12th house is the house of lack of manifestation. And if something cannot just manifest in your life, you've been trying over and over and something you're just missing, it's possibly because it's tied up to a past lifetime trauma or development or promise or a vow, which you can disengage from with this eclipse. It's almost like the karma of this thing runs out. The karma of this promise connected to a past lifetime or pain or emotional attachment is running out, and this eclipse can release it. So it can be a very hidden process that is not obvious at all for others, even for yourself. But you might be feeling like some burden that you've carried, especially emotionally, or some emotional attachment that you've carried for a long time, and something that feels quite karmic. Or you might not even be aware what it is, but it will feel like some burden is being shifted from you. And I would advise personally to make a prayer on that day because possibly it's something that it's not even visible to you, but to whatever has to happen to release it, to go to let it go. And if you can do some past life regression, my God, this month can be around the time of the eclipse. You can see your past lifetimes back to Lemuria and Atlantis, probably. Who knows? So they can give you an answer for sure to such kind of past life regression, to issues stemming from the past, and it can be released. That's what Ketu wants, released. And 12th house is also notorious and known for addictions. It can be a liberation and releasing of some addiction, of some kind of restrictive condition, which is karmic again, because 12 house is the house of prisons, where are you in prison in some way? You might be in prison in your mind, you might be in prison physically, you might be in prison somehow, stuck in something, and they can be liberating from that through this solar eclipse. And kind of you stop, and it happens through surrender. You stop resisting this imprisonment, you stop resisting this um, limiting condition, you accept it for what it is, and the resistance goes away, and it's released, and you develop emotional detachment and disengagement from that. We're done. Well, I hope this eclipse brings you positive releases, positive cleansing and healing. I hope if it affects your life, again, it can create fearful situations, intense, emotionally vulnerable, but the ultimate goal is to liberate you from something and to be free from something and to complete and to finish some karma in your life. So happy surrenders, guys, and do write to me what's happening, and don't forget the specials that I'm doing on Rahu and Ketu eclipses. Rahu and Ketu, the South and North Node, what it means to have them in your birth chart. I have an extensive course. I'm slashing it 50% because of the eclipse till the end of the week, next week, for 7-8 days. So thank you so much. And then Duina and Bobby and April are doing eclipse specials. Check their with discounts and special eclipse readings. I love you.